There we go. All right. Took a moment to get going there. All right, folks, welcome back to Ndaba Africa. Chris Wyatt here again. We are just about 9 minutes away from lockdown in York County, Pennsylvania, right here in the heart of central Pennsylvania. Yep, we're joining a lot of folks around the world, whether you're in the UK, in South Africa, this weekend in Lesotho or in Zambia, possibly also out into Botswana as we get going here at these lockdowns. Here in the United States, New York City's already been in lockdown. Philadelphia and the counties immediately around it have also been in lockdown for several days. And today, Governor Wolf this afternoon announced they'll be adding 3 more counties to the list of counties in Pennsylvania, which, as I mentioned, around Philadelphia primarily, but also around Pittsburgh out in the west. Those counties are Lancaster County to our east, the famous county which many folks know for the Amish. You'll find the Amish having settled there about 300 years ago and still being a large number of residents of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And then beyond Lancaster, just to the west of that, across the Susquehanna River, that would be us in York County, Pennsylvania, and also Berks County, which is northwest of Philadelphia. So that adds 3 more counties to what's going on here. And so I'd hope to put some slides up, but my useless tablet is doing what it usually does when I send an email to it. It takes its sweet time deciding to load it up. So right now, we'll just keep talking about what's going on. And looks like there's one person's joined in the stream right now. Don't know who that is. See if it'll let me see that. It does not let me see who's there. Anyway, so here we are, just a matter of 7 minutes now from York County going into lockdown. So on this lockdown, residents, unless they are key service or key personnel and have a letter indicating that for law enforcement, are asked to stay home in their homes and not leave their homes until April 6th. So while South Africa and the rest of Southern Africa are undergoing, for certain, a longer period of time, South Africa's lockdown is 21 days. Zambia's is for 14 days, as is, I believe, Lesotho's. While they're going through a longer period, at least here in York, we're supposed to be in lockdown until the 6th of April. Given that's only about 11 days away, I wonder if, in fact, that'll hold or if they will extend our lockdown for a period beyond that. I should think that's probably likely the odds, although I don't know for sure. So let's see if I can get this thing to come up now on my useless tablet. I do have my phone as a backup, but I suspect that you're not going to be able to see this very well on the screen, and I am correct. So let's see if I can get this tablet to work. I've got some slides put together to talk about what's happening here in Pennsylvania itself. Oh, look at that. It actually opened up. So let's see if I can get the thing to open up. So while I'm waiting for that, we're also going to talk a little bit about Southern Africa, what's happened today, and also touch on events around Africa, not just Southern Africa, for those who are interested. We can talk about Niger, Uganda, and Liberia, events that took place in those locations. So there we go. All right, let's see if I can get the show to go. I've done this before, and now it doesn't want to work. Okay, show presenter view. Okay, that's not what I want. I want to see the show view. Slideshow, that's what we want. There we go. Okay, all right, should fill up the screen. There you go. So perhaps you can see that a little bit better. As we sit here, well, it's not so great, but as we sit here tonight, this is the global chart which Johns Hopkins University keeps up from their medical center, and the current tally of confirmed Wuhan coronavirus COVID-19 around the globe is 591,802. That's as of about an hour and 20 minutes ago. Nearly 27,000 deaths attributed to this virus confirmed. And sadly, the United States now leads the world in confirmed COVID-19 virus cases with nearly 102,000 cases. Strangely, China is still sitting on 81,000 cases. They hit 80,000 on the 12th of February, and they're at 81,000. Can I get a show of hands? Who believes that to be true? Certainly not me. I'm not buying into that story. That seems quite odd that they're only at 81,000. I don't care if they flattened the curve. They didn't crush the curve. How do they still have 81,000 when that has now been February 12th? Today is March 27th. So you're telling me that when they reached that on February 12th, that the 80,000 people some of whom are already recovered and many of whom are still sick, the people that were still sick are still sick now? No, this thing doesn't last that long. Something doesn't make sense. But nonetheless, here in the United States, we now have the unfortunate distinction of having the most cases on the planet. And York County, Pennsylvania, we have 29 confirmed cases here, which is now leading us into lockdown. So if I can show you the map here, this is a blow up of the region focused on Pennsylvania. I know that's not the best at the lighting here. I apologize for that. But as you can see, Pennsylvania is in the center here, and off to the side here of the map, that's heading over towards New York, where you see all of that red. New York being the epicenter now. I don't know the current tally. When I last looked, it was 34,000 last night. It's certainly well beyond that today. The U.S. has added, I believe, 16,000 new cases confirmed today. And with New York being the epicenter, I would imagine a fair number of those are in New York City. I'll check those stats later on. We're now 3 minutes away from lockdown in York County, Pennsylvania. So here's a map of the spread of the virus in Pennsylvania itself as a state. The colors indicate that really doesn't come out very well at all. You can see that. But you can probably see the orange there. The orange are counties around Philadelphia. And out on the other side of the state, that's Pittsburgh. York County is located here. The orange player, which you can barely see in there. I really apologize for that. I'm not sure why that comes out so badly on this map. There's a blow up of the county itself, and then you can't even see that. That's a waste of time. But let me tell you about York County. Earlier I was talking, I said 178,000. I'm not sure where I was getting that figure from. I was thinking of 108,000 for the greater York, which is the county seat. The actual population of the county in the 2010 census was 434,972. So certainly we're past that at this stage, a decade later. We're supposed to be in the midst of the U.S. Census as we speak, but this pandemic has certainly had an impact on that. I did receive a letter in the mail telling me to register online for the census. The last time the census was taken, not the last time, but 2 censuses ago in 2000 is the only time in my entire life that I've actually filled out a census form, and I didn't even see a census taker. So I'm 55 and I've never seen a census taker in my life. Now, I don't shoot census takers, so I'm not so sure why they're afraid to come around. But in 2000, I was living in California and filled out the long form, which was quite extensive. I'm happy to do it. It was a good experience. But in 2010, I was living in Botswana before I came back. And then when I came back, I was never contacted about a census. So I'm not sure how I was counted there, probably counted as overseas military. And so here we are in 2020. And I was hoping to see a census taker and someone with a long form questionnaire. Down to 1 minute. The countdown here. We are about to go into lockdown in York County, Pennsylvania. So just around the corner, moments away. 7:59, 1959, nearly 2000. York County. It's legal for me to run around the streets, but in about 30 seconds, it won't be legal anymore. 20 seconds to go as we count down to the top of the hour. Back when I was a disc jockey, you always had at the top of the hour, you had to identify your call sign for your station. Never forget that. That's quite an experience. It's now 8 o'clock, 2000, and we find ourselves in lockdown here in York County, Pennsylvania. Well, hi, folks. We join in solidarity with South Africa, our brothers and sisters in South Africa, with Lesotho and Zambia, who will go into a lockdown this weekend. And so we're now there with you folks, 8 o'clock on a Friday night in central Pennsylvania. So here we are. All right, so back to York County, a population in 2010 census, which I said I didn't participate in. Hopefully I was counted. This time I was hoping to be counted, and I just received something in the mail that says go online. That makes a lot of sense for the virus, but that was the plan all along. So a little disappointed I won't see a census taker, particularly since they were so aggressively trying to hire me to be a census taker earlier last fall when I went to hockey games, including the Reading Royals, and trying to recruit people to be census takers. So 435,000 people roughly a decade ago, and the county seat is the city of York. York has a population of 43,718, so around 45,000 probably or more at this point. And the greater York City metropolitan area, there's a population of 108,000. So approximately 1 out of 4 people in the county live in and around York itself. So it's a very rural county, even though we buttress on the northern side. We run into major metropolitan areas with Harrisburg, the state capital, and then just to the west on this side of the Susquehanna River, we have Camp Hill and Mechanicsburg. And then as you go a little bit further west, you have Carlisle, the seat of the Army War College, located there where I worked until I retired. York was founded, the county, on August 19th of 1749, and the city, which is the county seat, York, was founded in 1741. So folks have been here for quite a while, and that's York County. Well, since Governor Wolf has placed us in lockdown here in York, I thought I'd quickly talk about what's happening. So the number of COVID-19 cases in Pennsylvania, they have conducted 21,016 tests to date. Of those, 2,218 have come out positive, confirmed, and we've unfortunately had 22 fatalities. 22 people have died confirmed from the virus thus far. What is interesting in the positive cases in the state of Pennsylvania is that when I look at this, the majority, or the largest group, not the majority, but the largest group, 40% of those who've been testing positive are in the age group of 25 to 49. Those over the age of 65 are only 18% of confirmed cases thus far. Don't have a breakdown here of who's died, but with such a small sample, that's really not the most helpful information there. So as I mentioned earlier, the United States now has the unfortunate distinction of having the most confirmed cases on the planet. All right, so with that, let me go back to talking a little bit about Africa today. First, let's talk about Southern Africa, which is the topic we've been covering here lately. Looks like I messed up the numbers. So here you have Wuhan coronavirus, COVID-19 in Southern Africa. South Africa now has 1,170 confirmed cases. That is a jump of 243 cases today. And sadly, for the first time ever, South Africa reported 2 deaths from the virus in the last 24 hours. Zambia has jumped again. They now have 22 cases. The 6 takes them up by 6 today. Next up there is Zimbabwe with 9 cases, and of course the death we previously mentioned from the journalist who passed away. Eswatini now has 9. That's a gain of 3 confirmed cases. Namibia with 8, Mozambique with 7, Angola with 4, and still to this point, Botswana and Lesotho are reporting no confirmed cases of COVID-19. Now, folks in Botswana, some of them don't believe that. They think the government's lying to them. I'm not sure that's the case. I'll put it past any government to not lie or to lie to its citizens. Botswana did not initially have the ability to test the RNA itself, to do the PCR test, the polymerase chain reaction test, but they now have a laboratory equipped to do that, and they are testing samples in Botswana itself. That has reduced the turnaround time from 4 to 5 days to just 24 to 48 hours where they can get test results back. Certainly, if you are someone who has contracted the virus and you're in Gaborone and you contact health authorities, they bring you in and test you, the odds are they're going to know very quickly if and when the virus lands in Botswana. But the reality, folks, is that as now I'm not a scientist, I'm not an epidemiologist, but as we read the reports that a fair portion, as much as 80% of people who contract the virus either have no symptoms, they're asymptomatic, or they have a mild version of it, many of whom never even go in and get tested, don't realize they have this particular virus. That's very good news, but it skews the results. If you look at Italy, which has about 80,000 cases, they have nearly 8,000 deaths. That looks like a 10% death rate, a mortality rate, which would seem quite high compared to the common flu, which we get every year, the annual flu, which is well under 1%, usually about 1 or 0.2%, which is a low percentage, but still a high number in the U.S. with such a large population. But at what appears to be 10%, but that's not actually the true figure, folks. In Italy, if there are 80,000 people who've been confirmed having had the virus or having the virus currently or die from it, that is clearly a small percentage of the people who have actually contracted the virus. It's probably much higher. If it's 80,000, gosh, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 800,000 to 1 million Italians have actually been affected. So bear in mind that there may in fact already be people in Botswana who are infected with the virus. The authorities in Botswana have indicated that they will be announcing a lockdown at some point, or most likely will announce a lockdown. So put things in place to prepare for it, but they have not yet announced it as of this hour. So we will see. I thought perhaps Botswana would go in lockdown sometime before I went into lockdown, but here I am in York County, Pennsylvania, in lockdown on the 27th of March, 2020, much to my chagrin, about 7 minutes ago. All right. So there you have a little bit about that. Let's talk about what's happened today. I posted some articles overnight and early in the morning and during the day on a number of things. So there's a situation that took place in Niger. Back on the 5th of March, the police arrested a gentleman named Kakatuda. That's not his complete name, but that is a portion of his name. His full name is Kakatuda Mamane Goni. And he was arrested because he was posting on Facebook and other social media, Twitter, about news reports about what was happening with COVID-19 in Niger. A local hospital complained that he was reporting these things, and he was arrested and he's been detained. So what's interesting about this is that he is a journalist, or purports to be a journalist, but he does it on social media. So this is a good question. Whether he's a journalist or he's simply a citizen, why has the government arrested him? This is a chilling example. So folks are calling for his release. And my question is this an effort to silence free speech so that authorities are not embarrassed by what's reported, or is it an effort to protect the public? I would err on the side of the government overreaching in this case, but we don't know. I'm not alone in that assessment. So that's in Niger. That's a little bit disturbing. In Beijing, of course, famously know that the Chinese Communist Party last week revoked the press credentials early. They not simply didn't renew the press credentials, but have revoked them early for the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. Now, what do those three newspapers have in common? They are privately owned enterprises. In fact, that is the case. They are owned by other folks, not by the government. They're not state-owned enterprises. So those three private newspapers were dismissed, lost their credentials, and booted out of the country by the Chinese Communist Party, which said that they were spreading propaganda. Well, since they've left, we see less and less reporting from China. And so one has to question the figures that they're releasing, the information they're sharing with the planet. Once we vanquish this virus around the planet, it's going to leave an open question. Is China telling us the truth? Is it safe to do business with China again, to let people go to and from China and enter our countries? Because if it's not, if they haven't been telling us the truth, then this thing is just going to get out again, and we're going to go right back into this mess. And likely the global economy would collapse if we relapse back into this. Interesting to say that in the middle. But so Niger is arresting a journalist. Beijing is kicking out journalists. And Pretoria in South Africa, of course, I've mentioned several times, has made the creation and dissemination of what it terms fake news about the virus to be a criminal offense. Now, I'm not sure they can make that case legally, but when a minister who's embarrassed by racist policies, the ministry itself puts out in applications for grants for relief from the epidemic for businesses, when that minister declares her own department's publication to be fake news because it was not supposed to be released to the public, you have to question whether the government is trying to protect the public or suppress information. In Washington, D.C., legislators have been using the Wuhan coronavirus, COVID-19, as an excuse to push outrageous legislation to confiscate arms, to change voting systems so that people don't have to produce identification, to force local election boards to do the bidding of politicians in D.C. And that's not how we do elections in this country. So it's very distressing to see them in an effort trying to confiscate guns and take away people's constitutionally guaranteed rights. So governments around the world are feeling their weight and pushing it around, suspending civil liberties, disregarding freedom of speech, and kicking people away. In Uganda, newspapers, the New Vision, had reported that the UPDF, the Uganda People's Defense Force, had been participating in operations and hunting down suspected carriers of the COVID virus. So it specifically said security operatives together with health ministry teams are hunting for suspected coronavirus carriers who fled to 6 districts across the country. Well, that sentence is chilling. The military out hunting down people. But that's not perhaps what's really going on. This is part of a government task force, and these were people who were supposed to be self-quarantined because of their exposure, and they simply disappeared into the woodwork. And so folks are taking a look around. We got Mason on here. Mason asked how many cases are in York at this point right now. Mason, there are 29 confirmed cases in York County. So not that many, but that's confirmed cases. And that's the thing that people lose sight of. It's a little bit distressing today. Yesterday, especially, I saw people out playing soccer, playing basketball, People hanging around the streets, taking advantage of almost a nice spring day, not having to work or be in school. But that's not why they're not in school or why they're not at work. They're supposed to be distancing themselves. And so that was a little distressing for me. So while I'm not a fan of suppressing civil liberties and taking away people's freedom of movement, the guidelines asking or directing people to stay at home serve a purpose to let this virus flame out. And that's hopefully what's happening. But 29 cases, that's up from 12 we had just a couple of days ago here in York County. So that's a pretty small number compared to, say, the city of Philadelphia or even Pittsburgh. Philadelphia, I think, has 550 cases thereabouts right now. And then out in Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, there are, Westmoreland, there are, 158 or something like that. So the epicenter of this right now is Philadelphia and the surrounding counties around it, Chester and places like that. So there you have it. All right, so again, back to Uganda. And so the police, or the military, the military out supporting the police and the health department, the health ministry in trying to get control of things. The Army and the police have sent 240 medical personnel to support the health ministry. Now those 40 have already been deployed to Entebbe Grade B and the Mulago hospitals. So the military is helping in that respect. The UPDF often gets beat up for some things it does, but in this case, it sounds like they're making a contribution to helping folks out. All right, so let me move on to Liberia, which I don't have a photograph here, but that was Mason asked, do you think the lockdown will be extended due to how rapid this is growing? Well, it's speculation on my part. As I said, I'm not an epidemiologist, but I have spent a greater part of the last couple of decades dealing with infectious disease, particularly HIV and Ebola in Africa during my tours there. And I have also dealt with tuberculosis and other things there with programs that I've run. To answer the question, as a layperson, not as an epidemiologist, but someone with a great interest in it and experience there, I would say that, I wouldn't be surprised to see this lockdown go beyond the 6th of April, which is the date we currently have for this county. I don't know what's going to happen in the state, but if you look at the map, the slow advance of counties that started in Philadelphia and around Philadelphia, Chester and that area, went very slowly for the last couple of weeks. But now we've picked up and we're adding cases, smaller numbers, but we're adding them as we go further west into central Pennsylvania and beyond that. There are 50 counties now in Pennsylvania that have confirmed COVID-19 cases. And as I mentioned earlier, our total is over 2,200 for the state, sadly with 22 fatalities thus far. So we will see what happens, but my expectation would be that we'll probably go beyond the 6th of April. So hopefully folks were prepared for this and have been setting aside the things they need. Unfortunately for those who are knocked out of work for this or either laid off or have lost their jobs, my heart goes out to you, and I hope that's not the case for folks out there. But I would expect it to last longer, to answer your question specifically, Mason. So back to, I was talking about Uganda, but Liberia, one of the things I saw a photograph of people in Liberia who've been told to participate in social distancing. The government has told them that, but they're not listening. And this is very distressing. It was just 7 years ago, December of 2013, and then it was actually August 2014 when the world awoke, and the Mono River region, which is Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia, those three countries in West Africa. It was August of 2014 when they awoke and realized they had a disaster on their hands, and we had over 15,000 people die from Ebola in Liberia alone. It's just been 6 years ago, folks, when people realized that social distancing was necessary to isolate yourself. And here we are 6 years later in the Mono River region, and a photograph today of people at the petrol station or the filling station, gas station, wherever you're from, and they're standing right next to each other. I saw in this photograph on a news site at least a dozen people within 3 feet of each other. That's insane. You're not following the guidelines. You're not helping anyone out. And this is happening in a lot of places. South Africa's lockdown began at midnight today, so it'll be tomorrow shortly. It started tomorrow in South Africa. And already early this morning and into the day, the South African police and military were out detaining and arresting people who were violating this lockdown. No one's using the word curfew, so I guess maybe lockdown is what we'll stick with here. But in Monrovia, these people are not taking it seriously, and this is going to cause problems. Liberia has, I think, 45 confirmed cases at this point. But Liberia still has a completely broken healthcare system that they had when I was there from 2007 to 2008 in the aftermath of the conflict. And they still had during the Ebola crisis. When I left Liberia, there were, I think, 38 or 45 physicians in the entire country of Liberia for nearly 4 million people. Imagine that. less than 50 physicians. But I bet you I can find more than 50 Liberian doctors working in the UK and the United States, but they're not in Liberia. And I don't know the current total, but I suspect that it's also not very high. That's very distressing. So that's in Liberia. Now, also in Liberia, in the papers today, the Daily Observer reported that that the Wuhan coronavirus has also hit the diplomatic corps, specifically the American ambassador accredited to Burkina Faso, who had purportedly been flown back to Roberts Airport on a chartered flight along with some other folks, including the Italian ambassador from there. And the Italian ambassador's name, let's see if I've got this here. Yeah, so the American ambassador is Andrew Robert Young in Burkina Faso, and the Italian ambassador Andrea Romusi, both of whom reportedly tested positive for coronavirus. And they were both believed to be on the flight and then taken out of there. And with so few aircraft in the air, it should be interesting for air traffic control to see a few flights popping around the world. So this led to news reports and, of course, the Bush telegraph, word of mouth, social media, people. The word spreads like wildfire across Monrovia and, of course, across the country not long after that about the Americans evacuating their personnel from Liberia. But I don't really appreciate that happening because, to my knowledge, we have not drawn down the embassy in Monrovia or anywhere on the continent. So that's not very helpful news to say the Americans evacuating their personnel. It may, in fact, be true that the United States has evacuated a few personnel, or in this case, an ambassador, but that's because the healthcare system is not sufficient. It's not adequate in that part of the world. Having been there and having had a staph infection when I was in Monrovia, I can tell you that, thank goodness, thank God, we had well-trained medical personnel at the embassy. We didn't have a physician's assistant. We didn't have a doctor. But the regional doctor was in Accra, and was in contact with the nurse when I came down with a staph infection. And the doctor made great prescriptions, and I got the right medicine. Not initially. I got an older medicine, which gave my urine a very dark orange color. I thought I had liver failure. Found out later on that that's just a side effect of that medicine, which was developed to fight tuberculosis. They gave me a different antibiotic, and then I was on the mend within a number of hours. But had I needed to seek medical care in the community and not at the embassy at that time, my odds would not have been all that great. There was very few medical professionals in the entire country. So difficult situation. So for folks in Liberia and for Liberians in America, I would ask you, please calm down. Let's not panic. The United States is not evacuating its nationals from there. Now, it may have told and recommended for private citizens to leave the region, which the State Department has already done, and told Americans all over the world they should come home unless they live somewhere. If you're visiting or traveling for business or in school, they've already recommended the State Department that you come home. But coming home is going to be a challenge. There aren't many scheduled flights, and airports are not letting flights land. People trying to land in different locations like Kenya and South Africa are being told by air traffic control, turn around and go back. You're not landing here. But that's understandable. So that's Liberia. A little bit about Niger and the world. So I talk about the world. I mentioned our legislators in D.C. and their efforts to confiscate people's guns and contain people's behavior, things that run very much counter to our constitutional rights. And then, thanks for that compliment, Mason. I appreciate that. Mason says, thank you for all this information. You're great. I do appreciate that. I'm trying to do my best here. It's interesting to talk about York County, Pennsylvania in the context of Africa. There are a few people here in York County who have ties to Africa. There's a number of Liberian Americans who live in York, in the area. Also, there are some other folks who do charities here, Christian charities that do things in Africa. But there isn't a big audience for Africa here in so Mason says, hey, 46 follower, remember when you're famous. Well, hopefully that'll be the case. I was once famous. That was without this beard and the long hair when I was still in active duty. Appeared in the Wall Street Journal, France 24, lots of publications and newspapers. And that goes back, one of the biggest times when I was sort of famous was when I was responsible for rebuilding the armed forces of Liberia, which garnered a lot of worldwide attention. It was interesting. Interesting. But for a long time, I didn't have this ability to do social media, publish videos, speak my mind fully. But that was voluntary. I was a commissioned officer in the U.S. Army, and we accept certain restrictions on our speech. You can't have commissioned officers running around denigrating senior members of the government or the cabinet, or criticizing government policy when it's our job to carry out policy, as long as it's lawful. So now that I'm no longer serving, a gag is taken off my mouth and I can speak my mind. And so those who know me, I know that I'm a bit of a shrinking violet. I don't really share my opinions. No, that's not true. Happy to share them. And in uniform, I shared them. If the emperor wasn't wearing clothes, I was happy to tell the emperor that he or she wasn't wearing clothes in private, not in front of everybody. But now that I am out of the active ranks, I'm able to do this sort of thing. So I try to keep people informed about Africa and about all these other places. So particularly Africa. All right, so that's a little bit about what's happening there. In Southern Africa, I mentioned earlier, and that's where this comes from. Much of my focus has been on Southern Africa of late, although that's not the only thing I cover. It's just one of the areas that I've focused on of late. So once again, let me bring the numbers up here again for Southern Africa in case anyone's joined us later or watches this after it's finished recording. So today, the 27th of March, 2020, the Wuhan coronavirus, or by its scientific designation, COVID-19, these are the number of cases. South Africa now has 1,170 confirmed cases of the virus. That was a gain of 243 today. That's not a gain you want, but that is a gain that they have. And this is in the midst of the country beginning a 21-day national lockdown in which the South African National Defence Force and the South African Police Service, SANDF and SAPS, are out on roads and in residential areas trying to ensure that people are where they belong in their homes and not out and about doing things they should be doing. Now, there are exceptions for that, for medical care, for grocery shopping, and for people who are first responders have permission to be out. But the vast majority of the 57 million people in South Africa should be home in their homes at this moment. All right, so South Africa, Zambia, 22 cases, a gain of 6. Zambia has implemented measures and will start a lockdown this week, but they have not closed their borders. And this is because the country is highly dependent on commodity exports, in particular agriculture, but most importantly, something like copper, which is critically important in Zambia. Without that, it's going to crush them. So, but they're going to get crushed anyway. Demand is drying up from China, which is one of the major consumers, and from the rest of the world. So that's a problem. And I don't know how much longer Zambia can keep its borders open. It's controlled its air borders, forcing all aircraft to land primarily or only at the main airport in Luanda, the capital, shutting down other airports so they can control people and screen them coming through at one location, which makes sense, but it makes it difficult for people traveling to other parts of the country once they're on the ground. But their land borders are still open, and that's what they need to shut down if they want to contain us. So Zimbabwe, 1 fatality, which we previously reported. Then Eswatini, which now has 9 cases as well. That's a gain of 3. Namibia, 8, no change. Mozambique, 7. Angola, 4. Botswana and Lesotho, 2 of the few countries on the planet still not reporting any confirmed cases of coronavirus. Well, that's over half an hour here. We're nearly up on 2030 on the East Coast. I hope that folks find it interesting and find the information useful. It's been my pleasure to be here on the Indaba Africa broadcast. I look forward to the next one. And I thank you for joining us. Looks like someone just popped in the live stream there, so I'll hang around for another minute or two. A couple people popped on there. Wow, okay. The audience grew by 200%. Anyway, so for those just joining us, I've been talking about York County, Pennsylvania, which about 25 minutes ago began a lockdown, which is scheduled to last at the moment until April 6th of 2020. We've joined 2 other counties today, added to the list of counties in Pennsylvania that are now under lockdown. And those counties were Lancaster, which is located to the east of this county, on the other side of the Susquehanna River, and then Berks County, which is northeast of here, closer to Allentown, between Allentown and Philadelphia. So that's 3 counties that went in today, and that's where we currently sit. We are now in solidarity with Southern Africa, with the United Kingdom, with parts of China, but who knows what's happening in China. They've kicked the journalist out. They're telling us there's only a handful of new cases. Yes, I have some land that I'd like to sell you in the swamps, the Okeechobee Swamp, or in somewhere in Florida, if you believe that information coming out of China. All right, folks, that's the situation in York County, and I've talked about a little about Southern Africa and some of the other events in Africa. So here's the thing, folks, hang in there. A lot of people get excited about this, overreacting to what's happening. It's going to be okay, not for everyone, obviously, but that is unfortunately the nature of disease. But the way the news media have painted this situation and the way a lot of people behave, either dismissing it, not taking it seriously, or others acting as if the sky is falling, it's neither. It's somewhere in the middle where the truth lies. And if you practice the recommendations that the authorities have given us for social distancing and to wash your hands correctly and frequently, wearing surgical gloves, that sort of thing. It will make a big difference. And hopefully this lockdown will work out. Otherwise, I'm going to have to somehow find a way to slip out of here to find a Frappuccino at some point. I won't do that. All right. Well, there you have it. Thank you kindly for joining us at the Indaba Africa broadcast tonight, the live stream. And we look forward to you folks joining us anytime in the future and participating in the conversation here as we talk about Africa. And now we talk about York County, Pennsylvania, which I wasn't planning on doing broadcast on. But there you have it. Thanks a lot for joining us. I wish you all the best. As Red Green would tell you, keep your stick on the ice. We're all pulling for you. Y'all take care.